Okay. Yeah. So okay. That's interesting. So Drika, what about you as far as like did you recognize like having depression or somebody else having it? Like, did you see triggers or was it warning signs or anything, or just kind of like you woke up one day and I'm depressed, but I don't know why. I can't explain.
To be honest, it was gradual for me. Like the other lady stated that sometimes it's from your childhood. And especially in the Black community, we have like a lot of stuff that we like real deal issues that we deal with. We were only taught to sweep it under the rug or not talk about it. It was gradual for me. And it was just basically suppressed energies, those
Right.
suppressed thoughts, those suppressed emotions, and it became a snowball effect for me. So it was gradual. It wasn't something that I just woke up and said, "Okay, I'm gonna be depressed today." It was
Right.
stuff, you wake up and it's just like, I don't know. As women, we deal with triggers from our past. Everybody deals with triggers from our past, and it's like a pimple. You see it come to a head, and then it's to the point to where it can go either to depression or anxiety. Are you dealing with both? So
Mhm.
to answer your question, it was gradual for me.
Okay. Okay. So is it something like and if you don't feel like explaining it, like what was that depression? What was that?
Things to keep me together.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I know at least two of y'all have children, and we all got friends and family members, brothers and sisters. Uh, how are y'all everybody mentioned like basically this trauma of depression and anxiety is just being passed on from generation to generation. Are y'all recognizing these same signs that you went through your kids? And I'm gonna go to Mika with this. Are you seeing the signs that you went through in your kids?
Um, well, this is real difficult situation for me because my son took his life um last year. So I recognize a lot of things in him, that I saw in myself. But I was always the type of parent, even with all my children, I always was the type of parent that I didn't want to create trauma. Like I was really cautious about not wanting to traumatize my child or create trauma. I was always the parent that was asking questions. I would go to other people and ask questions, if it was something that I really couldn't grasp. So, it me being able to see it in myself and recognize it in myself helped me to recognize it in my children. By us being in the military, as I was in the military as a single mom. So, us having to leave our children, we went to war and our families were left here. When you're a single parent, that's really difficult for you to do. When I went into the military, I had 3 children. And I was fortunate enough that I had a village that surrounded me and my family. They took them in and they weren't separated. You know what I'm saying? So I always attempted to limit the type of trauma that I exposed them to. But what I realized as they were getting older is you can't protect them from other people traumatizing them
Mm.
or bringing
Yes.
trauma into their life. Like you can't protect them from that. There's no way you can. And I felt like with me being open about things, being open about me going through depression, being open about me having to take medication at one point, me being able to speak to them and just be honest. You feel me? I felt like I never wanted to be that to them, where they couldn't talk to me or bring anything to me because they felt like I was going to downplay it or just throw it out the window, you know what I'm saying? Because it didn't matter. I asked them questions. I always ask questions, like with my oldest child, you know, he had a thing where when I first went back to get them, you know, and they came to live with me, he was really having a hard time dealing with it because he had never been away from that space. He had never been away from all of his family. He had never been away from all of his friends, that type of thing. So I made a conscious effort to always speak to him about it. And at some point, we came to an agreement that he needed to go back to where he was. Although I wanted him with me and he wanted to be with me, it just wasn't mentally, you know, okay for him. And that was a problem for me. So I made it a conscious effort to try to do that, you know. And I also realized with dealing with my son Trayvon, my son that took his life, um, you know, that you can attempt to do everything right as a parent, and we don't always do so. You know, we don't get a book for it. We do, I think, our best as, you know, parents to make sure that they're okay and make sure that they are all right, but we have no control over outside influence. And a lot of times, you know, it becomes overwhelming. Like, if I could tell you, if we had enough time, if I could tell you some of the conversations that, well, or the dialogue that he and I had about it, you know, because he would talk to me. At some point, I had to call the police on him because I was in another state, you know what I'm saying? So as he's going through his own mental crisis, I'm trying to keep myself from going through my own at the same time, you know. So it was really difficult, you know what I'm saying? And you don't really, like I said, nobody talks about it. Like, I didn't know anybody where their child was talking about taking their life. It's not something I had ever really heard about, or if that I even knew anything about it. Like, I had never experienced it in my life. So that for me, you know, was probably like one of the most difficult things in the world. And even now I still deal with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, for me, that point in my life, it was, you know, figuring out the hardest thing in life you ever had to do and going to do it every single day. So every day I wake up and it's a conscious effort to get through the day because I know my child is not here. And it bothers me because I did attempt to make things right as far as, you know, getting him in to try to speak to people, um, getting him into trying to get him into different programs. And there's really not a lot out here for people that are going through that type of thing. Like, what they want you to do is put your child in a criminal system. You
Exactly.
feel me? And that's not gonna help my baby. You feel what I'm
No.
saying? Like, I'm doing everything I can now, you know, because I had males. I had three boys, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing everything I can to keep them out of that system. You feel what I mean? I don't want them anywhere in that system, you know what I'm saying? But you're telling me the only way that he can get any type of help mentally is that I put him in there. And it was just nothing, that was just something that I could never do. Like, I couldn't see myself, you know, just putting him in there. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. I couldn't comprehend that. I didn't understand the mindset behind that. But at the same time, there's not a lot of funding for it. For mental health. Mental health is usually the first thing they cut out of a budget. So, you know, it's not like you have any resources. There's no resources out there, you know what I mean? So if you don't have those type of systems and stuff put in place to help their babies, their children, that's what they are. You feel what I'm saying? And this life is really, you know, with everything that's going on, it's a lot. Even with this pandemic, like, I tell people, talk to your children, man. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't have anybody else to talk to, and if they can't talk to you, then, you know, Like, what else is there? Who else is there? You know, who can they go to and talk to? Like, you know what I mean? I did everything I could as far as, you know, you just
You don't take the blame off yourself because you did everything you could.
well,
It's
yeah, you know, and
you can what if
that's
it all
really a
day.
that's the that's part of my process too. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything is part of my process. You know, like, I allow myself to cry. I allow myself to have moments, you know what I'm saying? But I realize I can't be stuck in those moments. I have to get through them. I have to get past them, because if I don't, the people around me are going to be affected by it. You feel what
Right.
I'm saying? Like, he couldn't see that it would affect me the way that it affects me. He couldn't see that. He couldn't know that. There's no way he could have. Like, he, you know, I can recall conversing with him probably a couple of weeks before it actually happened. And, you know, I really thought he was on a path to where he was going to make some changes, try to get some assistance, go in to talk to somebody, possibly get on medication if he needed it. You know, whatever be the case. But like I say, you know, people have triggers, you know, and I don't know what that trigger was, but whatever it was something that he felt like he couldn't get through, and he didn't feel like anybody would understand, you know. So, I think now, you know, it's a part of my new normal is that I want to speak about it. Like, I want to talk about it. I want people to know that this happens. Like, it wasn't just my child. Like, my son was 21, and, you know, afterwards, you know, after experiencing that, I don't know if it's like she said, trauma binding. You found people that went through the same trauma as you. So I found people that had experienced it or were going through it. And it wasn't just my child, there was other children, and they were younger than my baby, like 13 and 14 and 15. And, you know what I'm saying? So it's out there, you know, it's just not talked about. And I feel like that's a problem. You know, that is really a problem, because this is something that people go through. You know what I'm saying? Nobody is talking about it, nobody is concerned about it. It's just like in the corner, you know, it's just set off to the side. But it's very important. Like, what's your physical health worth if you don't have your mental? You know what I
Right.
mean? So you got to be able to take care of that. And whatever it is that you need to do, um, you have to figure it out. Like Veronica was speaking, I think both of her and Drika spoke on it. You have to find a balance. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times it's within finding that balance, you know what I'm saying, that, you know, you have to you just have to figure it out for yourself, almost, like, because you don't have any avenues or any references to take from, you know what I mean? So, you know, I feel like, you know, from this point on, like, this is going to be a part of my healing process too, is to speak about it. Like, you know, get out there and tell people, because somebody can relate. You know what I mean? Somebody can relate to what you're talking about, and somebody possibly needs to hear it. You never know who needs to hear what and what time, and they hear it, you know, and it could help somebody. So it makes you want to help. It makes you want to say something. It makes you want to speak. So people will know, and people will, you know, like, you just want something to be done differently. You know what I mean? Like, prison is not the place for somebody with mental issues. It's just not. As a teenager, as an adult, I don't care. It just isn't. They don't know how to treat that. And it can become a problem. It is a problem.
Right.
Yeah, but a lot of times it's easy to write us off, even as kids. If you think about how they do young boys and girls in elementary school, they say they got ADD, ADHD,
Yeah.
and
Right.
that's where it starts. And now they just progress, and it's kind of like a pipeline from elementary school to prison.
Right.
No
Right.
counseling in between, no therapy. Let's try to figure something else out. it's a pipeline straight to the prison system, and then it's like, well, now they're adult and they're criminal, and now their life is
Right.
really jacked up when you could have fixed it or helped when they were 6 or 7. And that's why I
Yeah,
asked the
it's
question,
insane.
recognizing the signs. So if you recognize the signs early, you can start to help the process. Drika, have you recognized any signs in your kids?
At the time, whenever I'm and I would say not at the time, but we all still go through healing processes. But I allow my children, as I grew up with older Black women. So it got to the point to where we were taught that if an adult says something, that's what it is. And
Yeah.
so I found myself coming away from that standpoint of how I'm raising my children and allow my children to have a voice. Now, in that
Mhm.
having a voice, that didn't mean that you're disrespectful, but that's just saying you're able to be yourself. You are able to have your own identity, and you don't have to walk in the identity of what I had. It was a big falling out that me and my oldest daughter had. That really, again, that was when my little wake up call, to where it got into a physical altercation because it was a disagreement about my baby girl. She was ended up, I recognized, like, she was crying. She was on social media. So as a parent, I'm thinking somebody on social media bullying you, which wasn't the case. Well, it spewed into my oldest daughter and I having a disagreement. And it was basically, I believe that because I'm the adult, that you have to do what I say. And it was a wake up call again for me that I had to let my children have their own identity. That's
Right.
what it was. So it started a healing process between how we have a conversation about things, even with my boys. They know that they are able to express their emotions. I wasn't one of the mothers that would tell their sons, don't cry because you're a boy. You know what I'm saying? It's those things that we tell children that have them with a bunch of weight on their shoulders. And now, along with what they have in the world to deal with, they have to come home and they have to deal with the same thing from their parents, feeling as if, sometimes we set the bar way too high for our children,
We do.
meaning they're trying to reach these standards that it was already meant for them not to even reach. So now they're waking up feeling as if I got to meet this, I got to meet this, I got to meet this mark, when it is impossible. That's those expectations. It's unreal. It's unrealistic. So to me, I had to remain realistic when I was raising my children, while raising my children.
Makes sense.
Letting them know that, yeah, we're gonna make mistakes. You're not perfect. Being able to talk about what you're dealing with, able to come to me and tell me whatever you needed. And I started that when they were little. Everybody was like, you talking about sex to them way too early. Nah, it's, having to work in the healthcare system, seeing that children at 12 and 11 and 9 and 10 being diagnosed with HIV. So,
Right.
I was able to basically learn from other people's mistakes of what they were not telling their children, and being able to use that into how I was raising my children. But I also realized that broken parents raise broken children, and we send them to
Right.
a broken system. And
Right.
so, and
Mhm.
it's just a repetitive effect. Even with working here, I see a mental health system like the children. It broke my heart. It's a place called Alta Point, but it's a mental health facility for young children as young as preschool, but they are behind locked glass, behind locked bars, and they are being treated as prisoners. And I was able to actually sit in and talk. It was about a little girl. She was having a mental, they would call her a problematic person. So they was like, well, how is she able to come to you and talk to you? And I say, because I was once her. As a teenager, you begin to ask, in the beginning of the segment, how were we? How did we identify? I was angry as a child. I was angry. I lashed out at everybody. I began to, argue and fight, and it was just built up pressure. And I saw that in this child. Well, when I began to talk to her, she was locked up into this system, as they called a repeat offender, going to
Right.
this mental health facility. And all they were doing was putting her on medication and sending her to the same environment that you got her out of. And then she'll
Right.
act up, and then she'll come right back to the system, and then they'll change her medication, and then they'll send her back to the same environment that she was going to. And sometimes we have to check our environment. Some is maybe the potatoes not growing because the soil ain't fertile enough. You know
There
what
it
I'm
is.
saying? And that's
There
the
it is.
biggest thing. We sit here and wonder why things aren't progressing. Is maybe it's not the seed. The seed ain't defective. It's the dirt that we put the seed in. So we have to change the environment that we're in. I
Right.
decided to move my children from the environment. And my brother and my sister is a mental health personnel that we talk about this all the time. So it's exciting to have my siblings and I to where, we're dealing with our own past traumas. And we talk about it with each other, exercise, eating healthy, eating properly, and being able to find people that we can like coexist with, but people that can pull you to that next level. Most times that, I found myself, dealing with issues and attaching myself to people with the same issues, but you'll find yourself pouring out and you not being replenished.
Not
So
getting it.
you know what I'm saying? So it's just basically finding that balance. And then when I found that balance, I was able to show my children how to find that balance. And to be honest with you, now my children are showing me other avenues, with um listening to spiritual music and being able to wake up and have positive affirmations. And
Yeah.
there's this song, releasing things from your past. It's just things that you have to just release that is just buried deep down inside of you, that you have to, release it to make room for positive things, to make
Right.
room for positive thinking. So it was just,
Right.
with my children, fortunately, when we noticed that one of them would shy off, I would go to them and, hey, everything good? Y'all good? No, I'm good. Or then, they'll know that, hey, I can come to my mom if I got an issue. So just keeping that open communication, those doors open. I didn't have that issue with my mama. I was one of the teams, Tamika, and I'm so sorry to hear about your son.
Thank you.
I went through that as a teenager. I tried to commit suicide twice. And it was just basically from issues that was passed on. And I was basically having to force to deal with that stuff. So it's just, I had no outlet. I hadn't, even with the person who I thought I was able to have an outlet with, I had no outlet. So the best thing to me was to end my life so I did not have to deal with that. And so thank God I did. And I'm able to tell people there is life outside of what you're dealing with. It's only a temporary thing that you're going through. I was 16 years old, and I had teachers that would recognize the gifts in me. Everything I touched, I excelled at it, but I was damaged from within. You put on a pretty wig and some nice eyelashes and you good. But people be having some fucked up energies in the inside that they have to deal with. You know what I'm saying? So as a teenager, our brain ain't really fully developed at all. So we are forced to have to deal with issues. My issue was, and I'm gonna just be transparent. I ended up getting pregnant, and my mom, we grew up Baptist, so y'all already know how that is like. She was basically did not want to deal with what the church was gonna think about her daughter becoming pregnant.
Oh, boy.
So I was forced to have an abortion. Okay. So at that age, I'm having to deal with the emotions of getting rid of a child. And then even after the procedure, it was told to me that, that's what you get. It was just no compassion. No, it's So we have to understand you never know what a person is going through.
Absolutely.
So I try to be the only Jesus, the Jesus that people may not even have a relationship with. You know, they ask me why I don't meet strangers, because I never know what a person is going through. And I don't want to be that trigger that sends them over the edge. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be very, you have to be, I wouldn't say, you have to watch how you approach people. You have to watch how you address people, because you never know what that trigger would be to send them on the edge. So as teenagers, mind you, I'm not able to process these thoughts. I'm not able to identify what's going on. I can't even make a concrete decision. So we have to, as young adults, dealing with how to deal with it. And for some people just ain't made like that. Some people just not built like that. Some people, and I wouldn't say fold underneath pressure. Some people, once they made up in their mind that this is what it is that I want to do, and it would be better for me to do this, then that's what they're gonna do. No matter what anybody else told me, it's what I ultimately it was my decision. My decision at the end of the day. So until we're able to sit down and say, depression is like a deep, dark hole that we get in. And until we recognize that we are the only ones that need to climb out of that hole, then nothing else, nobody else does around us is going to make any sense. If that makes sense.